So, Anne, is there any direction or I just ask you because you might have been involved in planning more than anybody else. Is there direction for this activity?
Well, I think that the idea is just to hear a little bit about what the task force has been doing, maybe some of the recommendations. If you're prepared to share them kind of with the group and people want to respond, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks. I didn't really know what the expectation was. So we'll make it up as we go along, unless somebody else has something to say. I'm speaking because I'm Mark Johnson on the task force, and I am one of the co-chairs, along with Dave Wolf, who's in the call with us as well. We are the co-chairs of the Barriers and Technology Group subgroup for the task force, for the broadband task force. So I will just kind of go over, as you might have heard during the opening, the task force is in the process right now of working on our report to be done by the end of the year. And I'll just go over real quickly sort of the subject areas or the topics that we're kind of looking at for this report, and then open it up to see if you have any questions or suggestions or thoughts. And Dave and other members, I know we have the other members of our subgroup, Jim Wycombe, Nolan Cawthon, and Steve Georgie are all on the call as well. So, or in this group as well. So please feel free to fill in if I've forgotten something, or if you have comments as well at any time. But being the Barriers and Technology subgroup, you can expect that our report's going to center around barriers and technology. So in terms of the way we're going to structure our part of the report, we will talk about the technologies that are available. The task force has heard from many providers of different types of technology, with fiber DSL, cable coax, your fixed wireless, your cellular providers, as well as our low Earth orbit LEO satellite possibilities that are coming. So we've heard from lots of different providers, and we want to make sure that we talk about the various technologies, the limitations of some of them, the promise of some of them, and what they might bring to the table both now and in the future. That the age-old debate, fiber versus wireless, continues, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then look at barriers to doing some of those various different technologies. There are geographical barriers, there are other barriers that exist as well. We want to talk about how the various investments in different types of technologies that have been done through, that you've heard of some of them already here today, how have those investments helped or hindered progress in reaching our goals in the state of ubiquitous broadband access. And we'll talk in the technology piece, what we've discovered. It's not really what we've discovered, I guess we knew it all along, but what's been highlighted as through the pandemic is the upload speed importance. And that aspect of it. Download is great, upload is really what you need to be productive. So from all of those things you've heard people talk about, be it industry, be it telemedicine, be it education, upload speed is paramount in agriculture, in all of these areas, to be able to be productive. So we'll talk about that in our technology review. Barriers, of course, COVID-19 has provided us a number of ways to look at barriers that exist, where access is and isn't, where, and especially in the schools, we've looked at this, and we've looked at where, if you ask people if they have internet access, they might say yes, but we find out that their access is substandard to actually do distance learning, to actually do telehealth and to work from home. So we want to talk about that and some stories there. Affordability, if the pandemic has taught us anything, there's a lot more of a problem with affordability than perhaps we had focused on before. So we'll look at that. We talk about mapping and the accuracy of where service is available and where it isn't. I think, again, the pandemic has helped us show that, has helped us show where there are pockets that are maybe not accurate in the larger maps that are done, because those are a little bit more high level. When you really get down to the specifics, we find other areas that maybe need to be talked about, that need to be brought to the forefront. Easements, access issues are other things that we'll talk about in the barriers section. Our group, as far as recommendations, we certainly are going to recommend, probably along with the rest of the task force, continued funding for the Office of Broadband Development and making it a recurring funding stream, so we don't have to bring it back every 2 years and say, hey, we still need to do this. We're pretty sure this is not a problem that's going to go away in the near term, and we want to have the legislature understand the importance of funding that for the long term. Of course, continued and increased funding for the Border to Border program. You heard Nathan Zacharias talk about that from the Minnesota Rural Broadband Coalition point of view. The task force is, and our group is certainly going to support that as a recommendation. We've talked a lot in the task force about speed goals. Of course, we had a 25.3 speed goal through 2022 and a 100 down, 20 meg up speed goal that goes, that is in place for 2026. Our feeling as a group is that we may need to look at the upload side of that. Maybe 20 megs is not a strong enough goal for upload speed, considering the importance of that in productivity. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that with the large group. We definitely recommend that any new funding should first go to areas that do not currently meet the 2022 goal, because we have a number of areas that are sort of stuck at that level or that have reached that level, and we have a number of areas that are stuck still below that level. And we don't want to talk about getting them to 25.3 at this point anymore. We want to go the next level, but we certainly have those areas that are below that. And then we want providers to demonstrate, or we want any new monies to go to that 120 goal in terms of border to border broadband grant. And then we want with that, we want providers to demonstrate how they will meet the 2026 goal in order to receive that funding. So that's where this barriers and technology group stands. Do any of the rest of you want to add to that or provide any feedback before we take some questions and have some more discussion? My colleagues on the task force don't all talk at once.
Well, after hearing what's going on in other parts of the country, or should I say the other parts of the state, where there are obviously more progressive local leaders, elected officials, I think one of the barriers is leadership. You know, when you've got a county that's willing to invest 20% of their total levy, and I live in a county whose levy is $135 million a year, that won't invest $1, there's a barrier.
Yes, thanks, Steve.
So,
and I would agree. Dave and I, and Dave would probably smile and nod at this, had a conversation just this morning, about this and our area. And I was thrilled to see the rankings come out and have my home county, Kanabec County, fall to number 87 out of 87 on the list.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and we have, yes, speaks well for my participation in all of this, doesn't it? Apparently I've moved the needle in the wrong direction. But anyhow, we talked about that too. From the leadership point of view in the county, we just don't have people at this point that are willing to make that investment. And we're looking for the next, what's the next direction to take? to try and work on that. So I would agree that in many areas that's a definite barrier.
I think it's important to add, though, there have been some tremendous success stories.
For sure.
I hate to leave that out. You know, one example with the CARES dollars, we just entered into a memorandum of understanding with the township where they're pledging their CARES dollars, 72,000 bucks, if we begin constructing and get at least 2 to 3 neighborhoods done by December 20th. And, you know, for a co-op, it's probably a little bit easier to operate like that. Material contractors not available this time of the year. We were lucky enough to find some cable and some other some plant material. We already had contractors under contract. So, I mean, the flexibility becomes very, very immediate. I think being on this task force and this committee specifically, if I can say one positive thing about COVID-19 is it really revealed where we're weak.
Yeah.
And I was probably, well, let me back up. We adjusted all of our fiber broadband subscribers to symmetrical service by early April. And I thought we could just wave our magic wand and make that happen. It doesn't work that way with our equipment. It took us about 20 to 22 days to make that happen. I was amazed at how difficult that was and how this task force, this particular committee began to focus on symmetrical service or uniform up download type service offerings. And to me, that was a success in this group that we adjusted our tack quick on that. Mm-hmm. And I realize I'm kind of meandering around, but there have been some significant successes too. It's certainly not happening fast enough.
Oh, absolutely. No, thanks, Dave, for pointing that out. Yeah. And we've heard, right? We heard from a couple of great success stories today. And that's, we want to make sure we highlight those, which is why when we talk about, you know, in our report, looking at the investments that have happened, and we want to make sure we tell those stories. So Dave brings up a good point about telling stories, and we want to tell the successful stories too. Yeah, there's barriers, but there's also plenty of investment that's happened in various technologies that have helped move the needle and help provide service to many, you know, many businesses and residents in the state. So
and one other quick comment, we as a co-op, we have 1.2 million feet of cable on orders for our 2021 season. I ordered the bulk of that cable in July here, and 100% of that order was put in suspense by the factories in that we may not see it. And now you have to get scrappy. Now we're buying reels of cable on 10,000 or 15,000 foot increments as we can find them to warehouse it. And there isn't just another magic wand where you can say, well, let's overbuild the state. It doesn't happen that way. It's quite a challenge to get inventory right now.
Right, which is one of the barriers. And, you know, you'd have to say that our climate is a barrier too, because we have such a short season for doing much of this construction. Not true in all technologies, right? We talked about some of the investments with the CARES funding in some of the fixed wireless and things like that, which get a little bit longer season to be able to do some things with. But that is a barrier and a challenge as well. And availability, like you say, availability of the materials.
So Alex,
so other questions? Yeah, questions from anybody else here?
This is Alex in Todd County, and I got to tell you, Mark, you made me feel better because we're 7 spots ahead of you. You were still in the bottom 10.
Yep.
I've been, for years, I was the economic developer for Todd County, and I started in 1998 with the Blandon program. Where they helped fund cities and counties in a previous program, and we did cluster studies, and one of them was technology. And about the only thing I haven't done with the county commissioners that we've had, plus some are still there in the turnover, is bring in an AK-47 to threaten them. So it's pretty obvious I'm going to have to start with howitzers. And we just can't get them to move on this thing. And so what I've decided to do with the help of Region 5 is we're putting a consortium together of 3, maybe 4 cities along the Highway 71 route and the associated townships on either side. And this is our next level of trying to get something going on this thing. And I want to tell you, I really appreciate the work you put in, even though I didn't like the outcome of the each of the counties, because it gives us some ammunition to go forward to let them know just how dire our position is. And I'm sure the lower part of those counties probably feel the same way. I'm really anxious to see that report, and I did the barriers and the technology because those seem to be 2 areas that we lack expertise in here. So thank you for putting that report together, and I just want to make sure that we are able to get our hands on it. So is it going to go through Blandon or how?
Thanks, Alex. Ann, do you want to comment on that? Because you were, of course, the one who constructed that report on the counties.
Oh, the county profiles?
Oh, are you
Those
talking? Are you talking,
No,
Alex?
well,
about,
the county profiles we got, I'm talking about the barrier and technology report coming out.
Oh yeah, that'll come out for sure. That'll be publicly available, and that'll come out in all kinds of channels, I'm sure, including the Blandon Broadband blog. Yeah.
Okay. That
Yep.
I just want to know what avenue to get a hold of that, because it sounds like it's going to be a cornerstone in us putting together a program.
Yep. Yeah, you'll see that in all kinds of ways through the broadband community for sure.
Thank you.
But I do want to make sure to recognize Ann for her hard work on the county profiles. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, Alex. Anybody else comments or thoughts? We have about 5 minutes, 6 minutes or so left. It looks like.
It looked like maybe Becky Laurie, did you have a question? Do you have your
I
hands
see
up
that,
at
yep.
one point?
Did you call on me?
Yes, we did, Becky.
Oh, great. David, I had a question for you or for anyone else in the group. You talked about how you did that, you put that order in July and you still don't have it, and how you're having to search, which brings me to the question about what jobs, what manufacturing, what kind of things do you envision that we can do here in Minnesota to create jobs that provides this kind of material we need?
That's a great question.
Did my sound come through okay?
Yes, yep. So when a company like mine buys 1.2 million feet of cable, we order 30 to 35 weeks ahead normally. And the factories that produce those cables, like the cable we buy is typically manufactured in North Carolina or Atlanta. We're competing with large publicly traded companies for that cable. So the backdrop is there's RDOF auctions coming up right now in which broadband areas are being bid upon by a number of large companies. And these huge companies, which will remain nameless, can purchase millions upon millions of feet of cable, and they can tie up the entire factory's order. Sometimes it's for competitive reasons, other times it's just because they have aggressive planning. So it isn't so much can we make more cable, it's can companies of my company's size purchase cable fairly on the open market, and that's right now is a bit of a challenge. So what we're doing is we're getting scrappy. You know, it's not like we're buying vegetables at a farmer's market right now, but it's getting close to that. Did that answer your question?
Are these,
Oh, Becky, we lost your sound. Dave, I think she might have been asking too, and I'm
Is this an
wondering.
you?
Go ahead, Becky, try again.
Me? Is this an antitrust issue, David?
That's beyond my understanding. I know that the cable we buy has to perform a very specific way. It's very expensive to make that cable. We also have to get gopher-proof cable, just a number of factors that the cable has to be manufactured in a certain way to qualify for certain forms of USDA funding. And most of the telcos or broadband companies in the country use similar cable for obvious reasons. And large companies can buy it all up. And, you know, we've been in a very unique situation right now where there's a lot of demand for fiber. So smaller companies, 1 million feet seems like a lot to me, but that's just a pickup load to much larger carriers. So I don't know if it's an antitrust issue. I know that there isn't a fair and level playing field in purchasing this material though, for smaller companies.
How about from a manufacturing point of view? Have you heard anything there in terms of ramping up manufacturing? I don't know if you've heard that on the street or not.
There's a lot of ambiguity. These companies aren't always publicly traded that manufacture this cable. And so if they're going to produce, you know, 100 million feet of cable and a large carrier comes and says, we'll buy all 100 million feet of it, you know, we get pushed off that order or that ability at that point.
Sure.
This is Alex. There's another reason to make this a utility. Because then you have a commission to control. That's part of the issue that could be solved. That makes a more level playing field on who can get the equipment.
Sure. Thanks, Alex, for that comment. Did Brian had his hand up possibly for a moment? Did you still want to have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. This is Brian Frederick from Blue Earth County. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. It's not really a technical barrier, but more of a different barrier that we deal with. We have a number of vendors or providers in Blue Earth County that applied for the border-to-border grants, but they continue to be challenged by one particular provider and they don't get the grants. And so my question, you know, from a task force perspective, is there, the providers have asked me or us, you know, who's following up to make sure the people that do a challenge are following through on what they need to, because these providers that are getting denied a grant don't think that the other providers are following through on their challenge. So there's regular questions about what is the process if somebody has a challenge to hold them accountable and making sure they are doing what they said they're going to do.
Thanks for the question, Brian. Any of the task force members, I know we have talked about this. I'm not a provider, so I'm probably not as well versed in how to answer that. Anybody have a thought? I can say Brian, we have talked about this at the task force level and brought that up. And I think something that I've made a note of and will continue to pursue.
And Mark, this is Diane Wells.
Oh, Diane, yeah. Yep. Perfect.
Sorry, I have a dog barking. There is the pre-app notification, which is a process required by statute. And that was those pre-application notifications had to do out by August 19th. That is not the official challenge process. The official challenge process are when the applications are filed, they are posted within 3 business days. Those were just posted on Monday for our 2020 grant round. We will review those challenges and determine if any of those If any of those meet the criteria to be deemed a credible challenge, and those are posted on the website, for example, from last year. I'm not recalling any in Blue Earth County. And then we do follow up to make sure that those are built within the 28 or the 18 months that they have to do that.
Yeah, that is correct, Diane. There's no grants, applications for Blue Earth County this round.
Well, in prior rounds, if you want to just reach out and let me know which ones you thought were challenged and not followed up on, I can look into it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane, for providing that. Thanks, everybody, for your questions and your suggestions.